Hey everybody, I'm Lisa Evers. I am a Fox 5 New York news reporter. I cover a lot of criminal investigations. I cover a lot of law enforcement, both city, state, and federal. And I wanted to talk with you today about what the anniversary is of today, July 13th, 2025. That's where we're at right now. It was 1 year ago today that there was an assassination attempt that failed on President Trump, but it did take the life of 50-year-old Corey Imperatori, a married father of two, and also wounded two other people. Now, since that time, in that past year, some incredible things that I unearthed as I was getting ready to talk with you today about this, and that is that no one in the Secret Service has been fired for this. Now, it's true that 2 weeks after this happened last summer, Kimberly Cheadle, who was the director of the Secret Service, she left, she resigned. Just recently, there were 6 Secret Service employees, not clear whether they were actual agents or whether they were internal office workers. They were suspended for various periods of time, but no one, from what I've been able to tell and what I've been able to find out, has been fired for the lapses, the obvious common sense security lapses that happened that made that possible. So let's just talk about what I'm going to talk with you a little bit about the Senate report that just came out about this. You might remember, if you've been following it, that last December, the House of Representatives, they had their own 180-page report. So one of the conclusions from this new Senate report that just came out, if they say that, quote, I'm going to read it right from this so I give it to you straight. It was not a single error. It was a cascade of preventable failures that nearly cost President Trump his life, that there were multiple unacceptable failures. The House report found some very similar things and a disturbing pattern of communication. This is more from the Senate report, the new one. A disturbing pattern of communication failure and negligence that culminated in a preventable tragedy. So the two big things that they did not, that they've talked about in the Senate report and that we've heard talked about in the media a lot are two very basic tenets of law enforcement, of dignitary protection, and certainly of the Secret Service. Now, I covered the Secret Service a number of times here in New York City when they've been worked with the NYPD, the FBI, all of the other agencies here for what's called UNGA that comes to New York every fall. That's the United Nations General Assembly. So you can imagine when you have over 100 heads of state from many different countries, from all over the world, all packed into such a dense area, not all of them friendly with each other by any means, that is basically a security nightmare. It's a traffic nightmare for just regular New Yorkers because with all the dignitaries here, all of the protection and all of that, it just caused a tremendous amount of traffic jams in an already congested city. But that's a minor point. The fact of the matter is that many months of planning go into that. The Secret Service coordinates. They have their protocols. Whoever is the sitting president of the United States is usually visiting for at least 1 day during that period of time. So you can imagine what the security threat level is, what the concerns are, extremely high. Now, let's take a look, just go back a year. Let's look at Butler, Pennsylvania. The one thing that just struck me right away, and also it really drew the attention of a lot of people, and certainly many of the commentators and reporters and journalists following this, as well as law enforcement personnel, which is what they call line of sight vulnerabilities. One of the main things, we see it here in New York City. This is law enforcement 101, maybe law enforcement number 1. It's basically a line of sight. You want to make sure that a person, that a particular suspect or a threat or somebody with a gun or anybody who does not belong there is on the rooftop of a building, is at a window, is at a balcony. You will see at many major events that happen in New York with the NYPD. There's counter snipers on rooftops. There's counter snipers on various terraces. Every year we have the Times Square ball drop. That's over 1 million people jammed. It might be 2 million, but many people jammed into the Times Square area, which would make a very attractive target for somebody who wanted to have create a mass casualty event. So there are these basic protocols. So the line of sight, the fact that this was not addressed, was one of the failures that was cited in the Senate report. It was cited in the House report. Nobody is really arguing that. Why was this 20-year-old Thomas Crooks able to get up on the rooftop with an AR type of weapon up there and be there for apparently 45 minutes without being pulled off the rooftop or questioned? You cross a line in New York during one of these dignitary, you cross the street at the wrong time, and there's going to be officers there, there'll be other people there, other law enforcement personnel there, and sometimes the New York Army National Guard to push you back or to keep you in line. There's a constant state of vigilance. You have Donald Trump last year, July 13th, 2024, coming to Butler, Pennsylvania, and speaking in this group. His detail, his own security, Secret Service detail, who was assigned to him during the campaign, because at that time he was running for president. He had not been sworn in yet, had not won the election by a landslide yet. His own detail had sent numerous requests to the Secret Service in Washington, D.C., to, through their protocol, their procedures, saying, we need more resources here. We are requesting a counter sniper. We are requesting more resources. Those requests, according to the Senate report, at least 10 of those requests were left unanswered or denied. So that was pretty amazing, because it sounded like basic requests, not asking for, let me have protection for 30 or 40 other people assigned to me or anything like that. It's basic, just basic protocols are in place when you have a dignitary, or what they call a high value target, an individual who is a very prominent individual who also has been threatened in the past. You want to make sure and go out of your way. The other thing that is a huge glaring failure that came up in both the House and in the Senate report is this lack of communication. Usually when you have a central event, when you have a major event with multiple law enforcement agencies, whether it's here in New York, again, using the example of UNGA, of the United Nations General Assembly, you have the Secret Service is the lead agency. You have FBI. You have NYPD as the lead hosting agency. But there's one central command post. There's one center where every organization that's involved in the protection details, they have their person there. They're on the ground. There's certain protocols, and one of the most important things in any type, and law enforcement, experienced, seasoned law enforcement officers and personnel will tell you this: communication in the field is one of the most important things. That's like making sure you have the proper protection, whether that's bullet-resistant armor, body armor, whether that like a bullet, what we would call a bulletproof vest, a functioning gun, that type of procedures, protocols, things that happen. I mean, the agents that tackled President Trump and took him down to safety as those bullets were flying, those agents to me are heroes. It's a shame that Corey Imperatore, it's a tragedy that this 50-year-old man who was a lifelong volunteer firefighter in his community, married with 2 daughters, that he lost his life in this. 2 other people were injured. An entire community and a nation traumatized, saying, how could this possibly happen in this particular location at this particular time? Now, the shooter, 20-year-old Thomas Crooks, he was shot and killed by a counter sniper. And so we don't know a whole lot about him, but let's just talk about these law enforcement failures of what could have prevented this from happening in the first place. So the communication thing was key. Local law enforcement on the ground said that they were never in direct contact with the Secret Service. That is mind-boggling to me. How can you have an operation like this? Yes, the Secret Service can come in. Yes, they're going to have the whatever they need in terms of armaments, in terms of armored vehicles, in terms of that type of thing. but they're always reliant upon the local law enforcement, that meaning the local police officers, to the local sheriff, the county police, the county sheriff, whoever the local law enforcement agencies there, basically to let them know the lay of the land, to let them to be their additional eyes and ears, so that that there's a chain of command established. If Officer X at post A or post number 1 or whatever it is, that's in the protection plan, that officer sees something, that officer needs to notify their commander. Their commander has a direct line to whoever in the Secret Service. There was none of that. There were 2 different command posts set up. There was this incredibly like spaghetti bowl type of mix of communications methods. And if you're just joining us right now, I want to mention to you, we're talking about the tragedy in Butler, Pennsylvania a year ago, which could have been far, far worse. Condolences to Corey Imperatore, the man who was shot and killed. President Trump displayed incredible bravery, as did the Secret Service agents that day, in terms of how they handled it and did what they could. But there were failures as an institution that still need to be addressed. And I want to say this with the caveat that the times that I have worked with the Secret Service to cover their activities and their protection, protection methods and what they do that they can share with us publicly and have shared with us here at Fox 5 in past years under previous administrations, they're extreme professionals. They take their job with tremendous dedication. I mean, how do you sign up for a job saying, okay, listen, if the bullets start flying, I'm going to put my body in between you and that bullet, and I'm going to save you, Mr. President, or whoever that happens to be. So that takes a special type of individual with a special commitment to our country and to their duty in order to be able to do that. But clearly from these reports, now this is not just commentators on talk shows and podcasts. This is not the public, the armchair second guessing, armchair quarterback saying, well, this could have been done differently. These are exhaustive reports by both the House of Representatives as well as the new one from the Senate, saying that there were these preventable failures. Communication, as anybody who works in the field, if you work construction in the field, if you work in communications in the field, which I do oftentimes as a reporter, communications is key. We don't have, we decide, my team, my producers, our team in-house, the guys in the field with me, we will say, okay, we're going to stay in touch by text. Everybody's on a group text. Everybody's on a group chat. We're going to stay in touch by Slack. Whatever is the main thing, the main communication channels are established and they're open so that everybody knows what can we do if the situation changes in a matter of moments. With news, it's whether did somebody walk in that we need to be filming. It's obviously different and much lower threshold for danger in most cases, but it still requires instantaneous communication with key decision makers. So those communication channels are established way in advance. Law enforcement, multiply that times 100 or 1,000, because you're talking about not only the law enforcement officers, their lives on the line, you're talking about the public, the bystanders like Corey Imperatore and the 2 others who were wounded. You're talking about the individuals who are there as well, the members of the public that they need to keep safe. So that's what we're talking about right now. Love to hear from you. Let me check in with our digital content producer and see if we're getting any comments on this. Okay, this is one of the big questions. I didn't see an answer for that. I didn't read all of the pages of the reports. One of the questions that the viewer is asking is, why would the Secret Service deny that? I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. Some people said it was some people who are very strong Trump supporters would say it's because they didn't want to give President Trump what he deserved. Other people are saying it was a bureaucracy that was just totally not functioning professionally, that it was a bureaucracy that had just really lapsed in terms of its skills during the former President Biden's era. But remember, the other thing too is you have President Trump. He's been president already. He knows what protection is. He knows what the level of threat is, and yet he was still out there campaigning, going out there. He was even here in the South Bronx. He came out to the, I can't remember when a presidential candidate came to the South Bronx to talk to the community and talk to people, and he got a huge reception, a wonderful reception. But the fact of the matter is, he knows what good security is. So those requests, those more than 10 requests, were either denied outright, which we don't know the reasons for. I don't know the reasons for. If somebody does, please chime in. Or the requests were just ignored. Basically, like, oh, here's your request, here's your application, and there it goes. It goes into a file somewhere, and nothing happens to it. So it's just the fact of the matter is that it was not handled. The whole thing was not handled in a professional manner. And that's, I think, the thing that's the most shocking to me. These are just like basic basic law enforcement 101. Law, line of sight protection, and line of communications. And those lines were just not in place on July 13th, 2024.
You mentioned you have experience with the Secret Service. They're asking if you can go into a little bit more detail about that.
Okay, so the question is about my experience covering the Secret Service for Fox 5 News here. During the administration of former President George W. Bush, and after 9/11, his administration felt that it was very important for the public to understand that there were measures that were being taken to protect people, especially here in New York, where what the biggest terror attack on American soil ever happened. And one of those things, I was granted exclusive access, to talk with the Secret Service special agent in charge at the time. He showed us some of the methods that were designed designed in order to protect special, VIPs, whether it's the president, whether it was the vice president, whether it was key dignitaries from out of town. These were in terms of the methods that they used, the transportation. Also, barriers. It was a new. We're used to barriers being everywhere now, like in parking garages, at airports, in a lot of different places. But they had a new thing. One of the things they were showing us were these pillars that would come up out of the street and could be like that they could basically, not quite a push of a button, but that they could that could come up to stop a car from escaping, or to stop a vehicle from coming into a secured underground parking garage. There were things like that. There was a lot they could not show me, of course, but in terms of the protocols, they would come through the streets of New York, which you see at during the United Nations. You'll see federal law enforcement officers as they're taking various dignitaries around various heads of state. They'll be in an SUV. The back window will be open. Some of the side windows will be open. They'll be there. They have weapons in their hands, ready in case that vehicle comes under attack. That's a common sight. So those were the kinds of things that they were showing me of what was going on, and it was also part of with the United Nations General Assembly in a couple years after that. So it was just to see the exhaustive planning that goes in, the meetings that go in, the preparation that goes in, the communication systems that they have set up so that they were in constant real-time communication with the NYPD and with the FBI, and that any other agencies, this was the other thing too, any of the other agencies that had reason to, that were out in the streets, for example, our utility company, Con Edison, that might be out on the street, that they might see something, that there were reporting systems that were set in place. There are building plans, which the NYPD has for the area around Times Square, but they would have access to buildings so that they could see which buildings. Does this 25-story building have a terrace at the 6th floor, like a terrace rooftop restaurant, or just a terrace area, public area outside that other people can access? What are the ways in? What are the ways out? It's extremely thorough. So I have tremendous respect from seeing all of that for what the Secret Service does. And that's when I first heard about this last year, I was just like, I can't believe how this is even possible. We're not talking about a densely populated area like a New York City or a Chicago, or where there's a lot of high-rise buildings. You're talking about someplace where if you look this way or you look that way, you can see somebody that's on the rooftop. So I think this report is very important. And I think it also highlights too, maybe there were people making those decisions, to get back to the viewer's initial comment. There may have been people making those decisions, that were just basically what are called, in a somewhat pejorative way, bean counters, but people looking at budgets going, oh no, we can't have overtime for this, we can't have overtime for that, or we're not, he doesn't need that, or they don't need this, they already have one, why do they need two? That kind of a thing that was going on, without having real law enforcement experience. And I think law enforcement is a job that it's like some other jobs too, is you have to have field experience. You have to have actual experience in the field. Like if you're going to a doctor, do you want the doctor that wrote research papers, or do you want the doctor that's been seeing patients for the last 10 or 15 years with the same type of symptoms or situation or health challenge that you're facing, and that has that real life practical experience? So I think that's what it might have come down to. And I believe there have already been some changes. I believe there previous uh, Secret Service agents that are speaking out, have spoken out, and basically defended the honor of this agency. That, excuse me, like I said, they're basically put their lives on the line, knowing that every day they go out, they could be called upon to jump in front of a bullet in order to save the president of the United States, or any of these dignitaries, like when we see when they're visiting, who may be from another country that they don't agree with the policies or the politics of. So it takes very brave individuals to go for that type of job. And I'm confident, though, I'm really confident that they will get back to being the esteemed, and having the respect and the trust of the public, and of all the people that they are assigned with protecting.
I have a question for, so we're at 15 minutes, so you want to go through the last one.
Okay.
Why did they take so long to get him off the stage? Someone is saying like it took them too long to get him off the stage.
Okay, I don't know about the time. I don't know about the exact timeline for that. How long it took to get the president off the stage. I think part of it, though, and again, this is speculation, because I don't have the actual timeline in front of me, is that it may have been because they didn't know the agents that were right there, that were on top of the president. They may not have known right away if there was another sniper, if there was another shooter, if there was another person. And before they would move him in that kind of situation, I believe the protocol would be to make sure that they have a safe way to get him to a safe location. And given that the communications were so chaotic, and given that the communication was so bad with the local authorities, next to non-existent from what people are saying, I believe that, again, this is not based on fact. I don't have the timeline in front of me, but I haven't asked that question specifically of the current Secret Service. I believe that it would be they would want to make sure that, first of all, he's out of immediate danger, that he's down, he's covered, he's protected. You saw all those agents piling right on top of him, to make sure that they saw that he was wounded because there was blood, that they're waiting for an exit route and waiting for a safe way to get him out of there. They're not just going to try to lift him up and move him off the stage, because if there was a second shooter, and in a lot of these cases, a lot of these active shooter situations, they're very concerned about that there's not just one, but that there's two, and the second one may be from a different angle, or there may be an incendiary device that is set to go off in another location. So I would guess, and again guessing, I would think that was probably one of the reasons they had to wait. The ambulance is going to come this way, or we're going to take him in the car. What are we going to do? Where are we going to go? Another reason why they need to have, the Secret Service needs to have strong communications with the local authorities. I'm sure, whoever's the local paramedics, they know the best route to the hospital. They know the way to get in. They know this, they know that. The local police will make sure they close the road so that they can get right down, right onto the highway without having to worry about hitting any innocent civilians or any cars, to stop the traffic and get them through and get them where they need to go. So that's what I think. Should we do one more question or comment?
There's just one person who, like, it's a comment more. They're saying that they think that maybe like small towns shouldn't be trusted to have these events anymore. Like they should just hold them in like larger cities or locations where like the local law enforcement can like handle the threat essentially.
Well, I'm going to say this. Okay, the comment is about Maybe they shouldn't have these rallies in the smaller communities like Butler, Pennsylvania, and these rural or very small suburban communities. That they should be in these bigger venues. I mean, you could make that's what one of the viewers is saying. I would say you could make the exact opposite argument. You say that if you have an arena of 20,000, 30,000, or a Yankee Stadium of 50,000 or more people, that's a lot of people to keep an eye on. That's a lot. There's many different exits. There's a lot more exits. There's a lot more ways for people to sneak in. They can disguise themselves as workers. They can get jobs as workers. All of that type of thing can happen. I would say that it doesn't need to be. It's not that a smaller community can't handle it. It's that they did not. Is that, and it's very clear. It's very clear from the Senate report and from the House report. Is that the Secret Service did not establish the proper unified command center. I can only imagine what the radio communications and transmissions were like. Unified and very clear communication channels depending upon what the threat was, what the issue was. So they're prioritized. Only certain people have certain access to certain channels, but they all go through a chain. It's very clearly spelled out. So I would say that smaller communities in some ways, because they know the people, because they are familiar with the areas, they should not be penalized for clearly what was the Secret Service failure in this assassination attempt on President Trump, who was then candidate Trump. So I would say it doesn't matter where they are. If they can secure somebody in a city of 8 million people, including a lot of people that came in, that are undocumented, that they don't know who they are or where they came from, at any time. And so I think that everyone should be given the chance, but it's up to the Secret Service to come in and say, hey, we're the professionals. This is how you do it. And this is what we need. Here's the plan. Here's your role. You're going to do crowd control. If you see somebody where they're not supposed to be, like in a stairway or going up the steps or on a rooftop with a weapon, you need to notify your supervisor immediately. Your supervisor will notify the appropriate Secret Service person. So I think the President of the United States should be, or a presidential candidate, should be able to go anywhere they want in America, whether it's a big city like New York, with all of its problems and issues, whether it's a smaller community with much fewer resources. If we're talking about the federal government here. We're talking about a top law enforcement agency that our tax dollars pay for, that should be able to ensure that presidents and presidential candidates are able to go wherever they need to go in order to get their message to the American people, whether those people choose to live or do live for whatever reason in a rural area, or whether they live for whatever reason in a congested urban area like New York. That's just my personal opinion on that. Okay, good. All right. So I want to thank you very much for joining me. Usually I just came off the Diddy trial, which we'll be talking about in the weeks ahead as it approaches his October 3rd sentencing. If you'd like to follow me, please feel free. Lisa Evers on Instagram, Facebook, X, and on TikTok. I'm Lisa Evers Live. And of course, you can see all my stories on the Fox 5 NY YouTube page and the Fox local app. So thank you so much for joining us. Have a wonderful Sunday, and I hope you're having an amazing summer, all right? Take care.